Hey guys, tonight we're embarking on a journey to a truly remote, often unforgiving place, the 19th century Australian coast. Picture it endless, wild oceans stretching to the horizon, ancient sandstone cliffs rising majestically from the churning turquoise waters, and a sun that feels like a constant, blazing eye in the sky. As dusk settles, a profound darkness descends, broken only by the distant, hypnotic crash of waves against jagged rocks. And somewhere out there, hidden in the inky blackness, a ship, laden with a precious cargo or perhaps hopeful migrants, is battling against the unseen dangers of uncharted reefs and treacherous currents. In this vast, silent wilderness, a single solitary beam of light means the difference between life and a watery grave. You probably won't survive this, not without a very large lantern and a lot of patience. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are in the world and what time it is, down in the comments. It's always fun to see how far these sleepy whispers travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the relentless Australian sun beating down, even as twilight begins to soften the edges of the vast landscape. The air is thick with the scent of salt and eucalyptus, and the constant roar of the ocean is a ceaseless companion. This is not the cozy, picturesque coastal scene you might imagine from a European postcard. This is a wild, untamed frontier, a continent still largely unexplored by European settlers. Its coastline's a labyrinth of hidden dangers for the unwary mariner. Mainstream historical fact: Australia's coastline in the 19th century was notoriously dangerous for sailing ships, notorious for its uncharted reefs, powerful currents, and sudden, unpredictable storms. Shipwrecks were tragically common, scattering lives and valuable cargo across vast stretches of remote shore. For those venturing across the immense oceans to this distant land, navigation was a perilous gamble, and the stakes were nothing less than survival itself. It was the ultimate game of high seas roulette, only instead of a ball, you had a multi-ton sailing vessel. In this challenging environment, a few brave souls, dedicated to safeguarding those who sailed the treacherous waters, took on one of the loneliest and most vital jobs on Earth, that of the lighthouse keeper. You, as a 19th century Australian lighthouse keeper, are the solitary guardian of life and light. Perched on a remote headland or a desolate island, your existence a quiet vigil against the vast, indifferent power of the sea. Your world is the lighthouse itself, a towering, often isolated sentinel of stone or iron, crowned with a meticulously crafted lantern room. It's your universe, your purpose, and often your only companion for weeks, if not months on end. The rhythm of your life is dictated by the sun's setting and rising, the waxing and waning of the moon, and the ceaseless hypnotic beat of the waves. The quirky tidbit here is that, unlike their European counterparts, Australian lighthouse keepers faced not only the universal challenges of isolation and maritime peril, but also the extreme climate and unique, often bewildering, wildlife of the Australian continent. Imagine the lonely vigil, not just battling a tempest, but also swatting away giant, buzzing insects or occasionally glimpsing a wallaby hopping past your remote dwelling in the moonlight. It was a stark contrast to the often romanticized image of a cozy European lighthouse, adding a layer of rugged, untamed reality to the solitude. You might be responsible for saving lives, but you also had to fend off giant spiders. Priorities. Your life is a repetitive dance of precise tasks, cleaning the delicate glass lenses until they sparkle, polishing the brass until it gleams, hoisting heavy weights, and meticulously maintaining the intricate clockwork mechanism that keeps the light turning. There are no office hours, no weekends off, no social gatherings beyond the occasional family interaction, if you were lucky enough to have family with you. Your shift is measured not by minutes or hours, but by the relentless passage of night into day and day into night. Historians still argue whether the extreme isolation faced by Australian lighthouse keepers was more profound than that experienced in other parts of the world. Given the sheer distances involved and the sparse population of the continent, was their loneliness deeper, their resilience tested more thoroughly? It's a fascinating question, as the vastness of the Australian landscape amplified every aspect of the lighthouse keeper's secluded existence. So, as the last vestiges of daylight fade and the first stars begin to prick the darkening sky, you prepare for your long, solitary watch. The salty air whips around the lantern room. The distant crash of waves grows louder, and the vast, empty ocean beckons. Your task is simple, yet monumentally important to keep the light burning. A steady, unwavering promise of safety in a world of darkness and danger. Your quiet life is a vital anchor for all who sail by. As the southern constellations begin to pierce the velvet blackness above, you stand in the lantern room, the colossal lens before you, and you feel it. Not just the physical chill of the night air, but the profound, almost spiritual chill of isolation. Your world is the lighthouse, a slender finger of human endeavor pointing skyward, surrounded by nothing but the vast, indifferent expanse of the 19th century Australian coast. This isn't a cottage by the sea, where you can pop down to the village for a pint if you fancy. Oh no. Your lighthouse, like many along this rugged coastline, is deliberately positioned on some of the most remote and inhospitable points imaginable. Mainstream historical fact. Many 19th century lighthouses, especially on vast, remote coastlines like Australia's, were strategically built in extremely isolated and often inhospitable locations. Craggy islands, treacherous headlands, or sheer cliff faces, to maximize their visibility and effectiveness against maritime hazards. You're talking about places where construction was a monumental undertaking, let alone daily living. Your commute involves a rowboat, a steep climb, and a healthy dose of courage. You might be perched on a tiny, wind-battered island, miles from the nearest mainland, with nothing but the endless, churning ocean for company. Or perhaps your station is on a desolate stretch of coastline, backed by miles of scrubland, saltbush, or ancient towering eucalypts, with no roads, no towns, and certainly no corner shops. The sheer scale of the Australian landscape amplifies this remoteness. The nearest human settlement could be days, even weeks, away by sail or horseback, a journey fraught with its own dangers. It's like living in a luxury apartment building, except the building is on the moon, and the only other residents are a few particularly chatty seagulls. This geographical isolation translates directly into a profound solitude. Human contact is a rare and precious commodity. You might see a distant ship, a fleeting shadow against the horizon, but they are passing by, not stopping for a chat. Your conversations are primarily with yourself, with the creaks and groans of the lighthouse structure, and perhaps with the relentless murmur of the waves. It's a silence so deep, so pervasive, that you can almost hear the thoughts wandering through your own mind. Some days, you probably find yourself asking the lamp, "So, anything interesting happened today?" And then answering yourself. The sensory experience of this isolation is unique. The air always tastes of salt and ozone. The only consistent sounds are the ceaseless sigh of the wind, the crash of waves, and the cries of seabirds, which, after a while, start to sound suspiciously like they're discussing your life choices. Visually, it's a world of boundless sea and sky, an ever-changing canvas of blues, grays, and greens that can be breathtakingly beautiful one moment and terrifyingly monotonous the next. You become acutely aware of the subtle shifts in weather, the slow passage of the sun, and the constellations wheeling overhead, because these are your only true companions. The quirky tidbit of this isolation is the sheer, dramatic natural beauty of many of these remote lighthouse sites. Australia boasts some of the most spectacular and untouched coastal landscapes in the world, and lighthouse keepers were often placed right in the middle of them. Imagine the awe-inspiring sunrises painting the sky in fiery hues, the dramatic thunder of a southern ocean storm, or the silent glide of a majestic albatross past your lantern room window. You might be lonely, but your office view is certainly unparalleled. It's like having a permanent front row seat to nature's grandest theater, even if the only concession stand is a very long walk away. This chosen life, or perhaps destined life, of solitude wasn't for everyone. It demanded a particular temperament, a deep inner resilience. Those who couldn't cope often succumbed to melancholy, cabin fever, or worse. The lighthouse became a kind of psychological crucible, testing the limits of human endurance against the forces of nature and the quiet tyranny of loneliness. It's a very different kind of social distancing than what we're used to, where you can still order pizza and scroll through endless cat videos. Here, your entertainment options are primarily the wind and your own thoughts. Historians still debate the extent to which self-selection played a role in who became a lighthouse keeper, with individuals naturally drawn to such isolated roles. Did only those with an innate love for solitude and a strong, independent spirit choose this life? Or did the demands of the job shape those who took it on? It's likely a bit of both. The lighthouse, with its towering, solitary grandeur, attracted a unique kind of individual, someone who found peace in the absence of human chatter and purpose in the rhythmic demands of the light. So, as you stand on the platform, feeling the wind whip your hair and hearing the ceaseless roar of the ocean, you are not just a keeper of the light. You are a sentinel of solitude. Your quiet life is a testament to the profound connection between humanity and the vast, untamed wilderness. A solitary guardian against the dark, embraced by the distant, echoing embrace of isolation. As the southern sun begins its slow, deliberate climb, painting the eastern horizon with soft, muted golds and pinks, your night watch comes to its quiet end. You've spent countless hours in the lantern room, the colossal lens before you, a silent sentinel against the darkness. But the light's work isn't done with the arrival of dawn. In fact, a whole new set of meticulous, repetitive tasks now begins. Rituals of dedication that define the core of a lighthouse keeper's life. This is dawn's dusty ritual. You don't need an alarm clock. Not out here. Your body, attuned to the rhythms of the sun and the sea, stirs just before the first glimmer of light. You rise, perhaps with a soft groan from muscles stiffened by the night's cold vigil, and begin your ascent up the winding, cast-iron stairs of the lighthouse. Each step echoes in the hollow tower, a familiar, comforting sound in the quiet pre-dawn. The air grows warmer as you near the top, carrying the distinct scent of lamp oil and polished metal. Stepping into the lantern room, the powerful beam still sweeps across the fading darkness. Its work nearly done. Your first task is to gently, carefully, extinguish the lamp. This isn't like flipping a switch, it's a deliberate process, often involving adjusting wicks, shutting off fuel lines, and perhaps dousing a flame. The moment the light ceases its rotation, the sudden cessation of the powerful beacon feels profound. The world outside, which was just moments ago brilliantly illuminated by your light, now surrenders completely to the soft, natural embrace of morning. It's a bit like turning off your computer after a long night of intense gaming. The quiet is immediate, almost jarring. Now, with the lamp still warm, begins the real work, cleaning the lens. Mainstream historical fact, 19th century lighthouse keepers were required to rigorously clean the intricate Fresnel lenses and the mechanical components of their lamps daily. This wasn't just a casual wipe down, it was a meticulous, vital task to ensure optimal light output and reliability for the coming night. Any smudge, any speck of dust, any film of salt spray could diminish the light's power, potentially obscuring it from a distant ship and condemning a vessel to the rocks. You approach the colossal lens, a magnificent assemblage of glass prisms and brass fittings, sometimes standing taller than a man. The heat from the extinguished lamp still radiates, a gentle warmth. Your hands, calloused and careful, select the softest, cleanest cloths. You might use specific polishing compounds, perhaps a mixture of rouge and oil, to ensure a streak-free, crystal-clear surface. The quirky tidbit here is just how impossibly meticulous this cleaning process was. Every single facet, Every tiny prism of the multi-layered Fresnel lens had to be polished to absolute perfection. It's like having to polish every single pixel on your TV screen by hand, every single morning, with the knowledge that someone's life literally depends on you not missing a spot. One errant fingerprint could be a fatal flaw for a ship on a dark night. This wasn't a quick job. It was hours of repetitive, painstaking work, bending, reaching, wiping, and buffing until the glass sparkled like a million diamonds. You'd move slowly around the massive apparatus, your reflection shimmering in the polished surfaces, your breath fogging the cool glass. The silence in the lantern room, broken only by your own breathing and the occasional distant cry of a seabird, added to the almost meditative quality of the task. Or perhaps its mind-numbing tedium. It's mind-numbing. Beyond the lens itself. The entire lantern room needed attention. The brass fittings around the lens and lamp required polishing until they gleamed like gold. The clockwork mechanism, which rotated the entire lens assembly throughout the night, needed to be wound, oiled, and inspected for any signs of wear or malfunction. Every cog, every weight, every pendulum swing was critical. Then, there was the general upkeep of the room itself, sweeping away dust, wiping down surfaces, ensuring everything was in its proper place. Before descending, you'd make your final entries in the logbook observations on the weather, any ships sighted, any unusual events, and, crucially, confirmation that the light was extinguished and the lens was clean. This daily record was your communication with the distant, unseen authorities, your silent testament to the faithful discharge of your duties. Historians still argue whether the daily routine of lens cleaning and lamp maintenance was viewed by keepers as a meditative practice, a quiet communion with their vital charge, or simply a tedious, repetitive chore that needed to be completed before breakfast. It was likely a bit of both, shifting with the keeper's mood, the weather, and the general state of their nerves. But regardless of personal sentiment, the task remained a relentless, daily ritual of cleanliness and vigilance, ensuring that when darkness fell again, your light would be ready to pierce the vastness, a beacon of safety against the treacherous Australian night. You've completed dawn's dusty ritual, the intricate cleaning of the lens, and the meticulous winding of the lamp's clockwork. As the sun rises higher, painting the vast Australian landscape in dazzling light, your thoughts might turn from the solitary mechanics of the light to the quieter, yet infinitely more complex, human dynamics within the lighthouse station. For many keepers, the isolation wasn't just a personal challenge, it was a shared reality, profoundly shaping the family's confined world. Imagine the keeper's cottage, a small, often weather-beaten dwelling nestled near the towering lighthouse. This isn't just your home, it's your entire universe. Mainstream historical fact. Lighthouse keepers often lived with their families at these incredibly isolated stations, effectively turning the remote dwelling into a self-contained domestic unit, far removed from any town or regular social interaction. Your wife became your invaluable assistant, helping with the strenuous daily chores, and your children grew up with the roar of the ocean as their constant lullaby and the lighthouse as their playground. The challenges of this confinement were immense. There was virtually no privacy. Every argument, every quiet moment, every sigh of frustration echoed within the thin walls of your limited living space. It was like living in a very small, very loud, very remote reality TV show, but without the cameras or the prospect of prize money. Your neighbors were the gulls, the kangaroos if you were lucky enough to be on the mainland, and the occasional passing whale. For the children, life at the lighthouse was a unique, often bewildering upbringing. There were no schoolhouses, no playmates from down the street, no trips to the local sweet shop. Their playground was the rugged coastline, the sandy beaches, the rocky outcrops, and occasionally, the winding stairs of the lighthouse itself, though always under a watchful eye. Their education fell largely to their parents, especially the mother, who became teacher, nurse, and sole companion all rolled into one. This meant a curriculum often tailored to their immediate environment, learning about tides, weather patterns, and the names of distant ships from their father, reading from what few books the supply ship brought, and absorbing the rhythms of nature firsthand. The quirky tidbit here is the often ingenious ways these lighthouse children entertained themselves and learned. With no structured schooling, their education was deeply experiential. They might learn to identify every passing ship by its silhouette, become expert fishermen, or even befriend the local wildlife. Stories tell of children who befriended seals, kangaroos, or learned to mimic the calls of native birds with astonishing accuracy. Imagine their show and tell if they ever visited a city school. And for my pet, I brought a tame possum and my best friend, Kevin the albatross. It highlights a childhood shaped by vast, untamed nature, utterly unlike anything in a bustling city. For the keeper's wife, the role was particularly demanding. She was not only running a household in extreme isolation, managing limited supplies, and raising children without any outside support system, but often assisted with the lighthouse duties herself, especially if the keeper was ill or away. She might spend hours polishing glass, hauling fuel, or standing watch, a vital but often unacknowledged partner in the light's unwavering vigil. The emotional toll of this relentless routine, combined with the profound loneliness, was immense. Maintaining sanity and harmony in such close quarters required iron discipline and immense patience. Routines became lifelines, structuring the day and providing a sense of purpose. Hobbies became obsessions, meticulous gardening in the salty soil, intricate needlework, reading and rereading the few books available, or simply observing the natural world around them. Every shared moment, every family meal, every quiet evening by the fire, took on amplified significance. Historians still debate the extent to which this extreme isolation fostered stronger, unbreakable family bonds, creating self-reliant units forged in the crucible of solitude, or if it instead created significant domestic tensions, leading to resentment and mental health challenges. It was likely both, a constant tightrope walk between profound connection and suffocating proximity. The silence that allowed for reflection could also amplify every petty grievance, every unsaid word. You watch as the keeper's child, perhaps a young girl in a simple cotton dress, chases a butterfly among the coastal wildflowers, her laughter carried away by the wind. She knows no other world than this vast, lonely, beautiful place. Her father, the keeper, stands by the lantern room, watching. A quiet guardian not just of ships, but of this small, precious family world, isolated but bound together by the relentless demands of the light and the boundless embrace of the sea. You've glimpsed the quiet, often challenging, world of the Lighthouse family, their lives revolving around the solitude of the station. But beneath the human stories, at the very core of the Lighthouse's existence, lies a masterpiece of 19th century engineering, a silent, intricate heart that beats through the longest nights, the complex clockwork and oil systems powering the lantern. This is where the true magic and the keeper's most vital duty lies. Imagine stepping into the lantern room at dusk, ready to activate the beacon. Your eyes immediately fix on the colossal apparatus in the center. Mainstream historical fact: 19th century lighthouses primarily used powerful oil lamps combined with intricate Fresnel lenses and precise mechanical clockwork mechanisms to produce their life-saving beams. This wasn't just a big light bulb. It was a complex system designed to magnify and direct the light with incredible efficiency across vast distances. Think of it as a supersized, incredibly specialized analog machine, designed solely for one purpose: to shine. At the very center of this marvel is the lamp itself. In the early 19th century, this would likely be fueled by whale oil, later transitioning to colza oil from rapeseed, and then, by the latter half of the century, to brighter, cleaner-burning kerosene. This lamp wasn't just a single wick. It might have several concentric wicks, each one carefully trimmed to produce the brightest, steadiest flame possible. The quirky tidbit here is the meticulous, almost surgical process of wick trimming. A keeper would spend agonizing minutes with specialized scissors, ensuring each wick was perfectly uniform and level to prevent smoking, flickering, or uneven burning, which could drastically reduce the light's intensity. One crooked wick could mean a ship misses its lifeline. It was a pressure no modern barber has ever faced, unless they're trimming the eyebrows of a very grumpy billionaire. Surrounding this powerful lamp is the truly breathtaking Fresnel lens, that marvel of optics we touched on earlier. You've already polished it to perfection this morning. Now, as the light ignites, you see its purpose fulfilled. The lamp's light is collected, magnified, and focused into a narrow, powerful beam, piercing the darkness with astonishing force. Without this lens, the lamp's light would scatter weakly in all directions. With it, it becomes a concentrated, life-saving spear of light. And then there's the clockwork mechanism. This is the silent engine that gives the lighthouse its unique character, its specific flash pattern. Below the lantern room, concealed within the tower's shaft, is a system of heavy weights connected to gears and a pendulum, much like the inner workings of a giant grandfather clock. This mechanism, once wound, slowly descends, turning the entire lens assembly, or sometimes the lamp itself, on a bed of mercury or precision bearings. This continuous rotation creates the light's characteristic flash, whether it's a single flash every 10 seconds or a rapid series of 3 flashes. Your responsibility is to ensure these weights are regularly wound, keeping the clockwork turning smoothly, day and night. Imagine having to wind a clock the size of a small car every few hours, just to keep the world safe. The fuel supply, often gravity-fed from a reservoir, had to be constantly monitored to ensure a consistent flow to the lamp. Ventilation, too, was critical. The fierce heat generated by the lamp needed to escape, and a steady flow of fresh air was required to prevent the buildup of soot on the lens and to ensure proper combustion. Every part of the system was interconnected, a delicate balance of light, heat, and precision mechanics. The keeper's role in this intricate dance was one of constant vigilance and hands-on maintenance. Beyond the daily cleaning, you were always listening, always watching. Was the lamp burning steadily? Was the clockwork whirring smoothly? Was the light's flash consistent? Any subtle change, any unusual sound, could indicate a developing problem that needed immediate attention. This wasn't a job you could phone in. It demanded your full presence and expertise. Historians still debate the precise level of mechanical expertise expected of every lighthouse keeper. Beyond basic maintenance, were they true horologists, capable of intricate repairs, or merely diligent operators following strict instructions? It's likely that while major repairs required specialists, keepers developed a deep, intuitive understanding of their specific light, learning to coax optimal performance from its complex heart through sheer experience and constant attention. It was a relationship, almost a partnership, between man and machine, forged in the quiet hours of the night. So, as you hear a distant whirring or ticking sound in your own quiet space, imagine the silent, vital pulse of the 19th century lighthouse, its intricate heart glowing fiercely in the darkness. It was a mechanical marvel, powered by fire and precision. Its consistent beam a testament to human ingenuity and the tireless dedication of the solitary keeper who kept its complex systems beating through every storm and every calm. Silent night. You've polished every facet of the great lens, ensured the oil flows freely, and meticulously wound the heavy weights of the clockwork mechanism. As the last sliver of the Australian sun dips below the horizon, painting the western sky in hues of fiery orange and soft violet, the real work begins. With a quiet flicker twist, you ignite the powerful lamp. The light flares, gathering strength within the magnificent Fresnel lens, and then, with a gentle whir and a rhythmic tick-tock, the colossal structure begins its slow, majestic rotation. Now, the night's unbroken watch truly commences. You are the sole guardian, the silent sentinel in the lantern room, perched high above the churning waves. Mainstream historical fact: 19th century lighthouse keepers performed continuous, often solitary, night watches, typically in shifts to ensure the uninterrupted operation of their light. This wasn't a 9 to 5 job, it was an all-encompassing vigil, a constant battle against the encroaching darkness and the forces of nature, all for the sake of unseen ships and unknown lives. Your entire being is focused on the unwavering integrity of that single, powerful beam. The first hours of the watch are often quiet, almost serene. The air might be crisp, carrying the clean scent of the ocean. You pace slowly around the circular walkway, your footsteps a soft echo in the vast space. The rhythmic whir click of the clockwork mechanism becomes a hypnotic lullaby, a constant reminder of the light's tireless work. You glance out at the inky blackness, seeing your own light sweep across the vast expanse, piercing the gloom, reaching out to the distant horizon. It's a profound sense of purpose, a silent conversation between you and the endless sea. It's like having the most important, least appreciated job in the universe, where your only supervisor is the endless night sky. As the hours drag on, the true challenge of the night watch reveals itself: drowsiness. The rhythmic rotation of the light, the constant hum of the clockwork, the profound silence of the remote location, all conspire to pull you towards sleep. But sleep is a luxury you cannot afford. A flickering wick, a clogged oil tube, a stuck gear. Any minor malfunction could plunge a ship into darkness at the most critical moment. The quirky tidbit here is the specific, often ingenious methods keepers devise to stay awake during their long, solitary watches. Some would pace constantly, their footsteps worn into the floor. Others chewed tobacco or drank copious amounts of strong tea or coffee. Many relied on meticulous, repetitive tasks, polishing brass fittings that were already gleaming, carefully trimming wicks even if they didn't need it, or diligently recording minute details in the logbook. Some would even talk to themselves, or to the lantern itself, just to hear a human voice. Imagine if your only company for hours was the giant lamp, and you're forced to narrate your thoughts. Well, old friend, another hour down. Just 5 more to go before that pesky sun shows up. Think we'll see any more whales tonight? The shift from the early hours of the watch to the deep, silent belly of the night is palpable. The world outside seems to recede, leaving just you, the light, and the vast, unblinking ocean. You might occasionally gaze up at the Southern Cross, a familiar constellation, or catch a glimpse of the moon casting a shimmering path across the waves. These celestial bodies are your only witnesses, sharing your solitary vigil. But the monotony is punctuated by moments of intense anxiety. A sudden shift in the wind, a distant growl of thunder, or the unexpected sight of a ship too close to shore can snap you instantly awake. You might then spend agonizing minutes peering through your telescope, trying to discern its identity, its course, and its proximity to danger. The light's beam, which usually feels comforting, now feels like a spotlight highlighting impending peril. Historians still debate the true number of hours a keeper would continuously spend on watch, given varying lighthouse staffing levels and the demands of their remote locations. While official regulations typically stipulated shifts, the reality in isolated Australian lighthouses, especially with limited staff or in times of illness, often meant vastly extended, grueling hours of uninterrupted vigilance. This relentless cycle demanded immense physical and mental fortitude. It was less a job and more a way of life, dictated by the relentless demands of the sea. As the darkness reaches its deepest point, just before dawn, your resolve is tested to its limits. Your eyes may ache, your body may long for rest, but the light, your unwavering companion, continues its steady rotation. You are the fragile thread connecting distant ships to safety, a beacon of hope against the crushing blackness. And as the first faint hint of gray appears on the eastern horizon, signaling the end of your solitary watch, a quiet sense of triumph washes over you. Another night conquered. Another night the light burned true. You've emerged from the solitary vigil of the night watch, guided the great light through the darkness, and meticulously prepared it for the coming day. Your world is one of routine, of self-reliance, of the endless dialogue between man and machine, and man and nature. But even in this profound isolation, there's a date circled on a mental calendar, a quiet hum of anticipation that grows stronger with each passing week. This is the anticipation of the resupply's precious visit. Imagine the month stretching between visits. Your provisions dwindle, the oil barrels in the storehouse become lighter, and the last letter from your distant family feels thin and worn from rereading. You scan the horizon relentlessly, not for ships in distress, but for the comforting sight of a familiar sail, a plume of smoke, a distant speck that promises connection to the outside world. This isn't just a delivery, it's a lifeline, a tangible link to civilization, and the most significant social event in your meticulously quiet year. It's like waiting for your Amazon delivery, but your delivery driver is battling an ocean, and if they don't show up, you might run out of lamp oil. Then, one day, usually after months of patient, lonely waiting, it appears, a tiny dot on the vast blue canvas. It grows larger, resolving into the familiar shape of the supply ship, your lifeline. Finally here. A surge of emotion washes over you. Relief, excitement, perhaps a touch of anxiety as you assess the sea conditions. Mainstream historical fact. Lighthouse supply ships were absolutely crucial for delivering all necessities, including food, fuel, often hundreds of gallons of lamp oil, fresh water, spare parts, and, most importantly, mail to isolated stations. These ships often faced perilous landing conditions, navigating treacherous reefs and battling powerful surf to reach the remote outposts. The landing itself is often a dangerous, dramatic affair. There are no safe harbors or gentle docks at most lighthouse stations. The ship might anchor some distance offshore, buffeted by swells, and then smaller boats, or even surf boats, would attempt the perilous journey through crashing waves to a rocky landing point, or perhaps even be hoisted by rope to a cliff face. The quirky tidbit here is the often ingenious and terrifying methods used for landing supplies. Sometimes, barrels of oil, heavy sacks of flour, and even furniture had to be hauled by ropes up sheer cliffs, or carefully floated ashore through pounding surf, always at the mercy of the elements. It was a high-stakes ballet of ropes, waves, and sheer muscle, where one mistake could mean the loss of vital supplies, or, worse, a life. You'd think they'd have invented drone delivery by now. But alas, 19th century logistics were all about brute force and daring. Once ashore, the true treasures begin to be unloaded. First and foremost, fuel for the lamp. Massive barrels of whale oil, colza oil, or later, kerosene. Each one representing months of precious light. These are carefully rolled, hauled, and stored in the dedicated oil room. Then come the provision sacks of flour, salted meat, dried beans, sugar, tea, perhaps a few precious tins of biscuits or preserved fruit. Fresh food is a rare luxury, consumed quickly, leaving you with the endless dried and salted fare for the coming months. It's a very different kind of grocery shopping, where you buy everything you'll need for 6 months, and there's no option for impulse buys of chocolate. But perhaps the most anticipated cargo is the mail. Letters from distant family members, old friends, or even official notices from the Lighthouse board. You tear them open with trembling hands, devouring every word, each sentence a whisper from the outside world, bringing news of births, deaths, marriages, and the mundane happenings of a world you've largely left behind. It's a powerful, often emotional, connection, a fleeting bridge across the vast chasm of your solitude. The interaction with the ship's crew is brief, precious, and often tinged with sadness. You exchange terse greetings, perhaps a quick update on weather patterns or local conditions. They ask about your health. You ask about the news from the city. But there's little time for pleasantries. The ship needs to maintain its schedule, and the unpredictable Australian seas offer no guarantees of calm. And then, as quickly as it arrived, the supply ship departs. You stand on your desolate headland, watching its shape diminish on the horizon until it's just a faint speck, then gone. The quiet descends once more, deeper and more profound than before. Now that the brief illusion of company has vanished, the new supplies offer physical comfort, but the renewed sense of isolation is a heavy burden. Historians still debate the efficiency and regularity of these supply runs. Given the vast distances and unpredictable weather of the Australian coast, were they as dependable as the lighthouse authorities intended, or were keepers often left waiting, sometimes desperately? For overdue provisions, the logistical challenges were immense, and delays were undoubtedly common, adding another layer of anxiety to the keeper's already demanding life. But as you stack the fresh barrels of oil and carefully store the new provisions, you feel a renewed sense of purpose. The light is secure for another stretch, the essential goods are replenished, and the quiet vigil can continue. The supply ship's precious visit is a reminder of your vital link to the world, a world that relies on your solitary light and the enduring dedication required to keep it burning. You've welcomed the precious, fleeting arrival of the supply ship, devoured your mail, and perhaps exchanged a few quick words with the crew. But as the ship fades from view, the deep silence returns, bringing with it a profound awareness of your true reality, a world of distant whispers and exceedingly rare contact. For a 19th century Australian lighthouse keeper, communication with the outside world was less a steady flow and more a trickle, often delayed, sometimes lost entirely. Imagine the frustration of living in an era before the instant gratification of text messages, emails, or even a simple telephone call. Your primary link to humanity, beyond the confines of your own family, was the mail. Those letters, so eagerly anticipated during the supply ship's visit, represented months of accumulated news from distant relatives, official directives, or even just old newspapers, providing a delayed snapshot of events that had already unfolded. Mainstream historical fact. Communication for isolated lighthouse keepers in the 19th century was severely restricted, relying primarily on these infrequent mail deliveries and rudimentary visual signals with passing ships. There was no, "I'll just call the lighthouse if there's a problem." You'd often be living months behind the rest of the world. A major political upheaval, a new invention, even a family birth or death could remain utterly unknown to you until the next supply ship's arrival, which might be several months away. It's like living in a perpetual time capsule, sealed off from the present moment. You can imagine reading an old newspaper and thinking, "Oh, so Queen Victoria had a baby. That's old news, I suppose." Beyond mail, your most immediate form of communication with the passing world was through signal flags. The quirky tidbit here is the specific, often complex codes used for basic communication between lighthouses and ships. You could hoist a specific flag combination to indicate distress, or signal that a ship was off course, or simply confirm that the light was operating correctly. Ships, in turn, might signal their identification or report on conditions further along the coast. It was a silent, precise language, a flutter of brightly colored fabric against the vast blue. But its vocabulary was incredibly limited. You couldn't exactly have a deep philosophical discussion about the meaning of life using just flags. Flag, flag, flag means, I am terribly lonely. Please send a funny story. Unlikely. Sometimes, in truly dire emergencies, a keeper might resort to firing a cannon if one was provided, or lighting a massive bonfire to attract attention. A desperate, fiery cry for help against the vastness. But these were extreme measures, costly and demanding of precious resources. The very scarcity of such signals underlined the normal, profound silence. The rarity of human contact was perhaps the most defining aspect. Aside from the brief, hectic visit of the supply ship crew, your only other human interaction might be with an occasional lighthouse inspector, a rare passing boat that decided to approach. Or, tragically, the survivors of a shipwreck you had tried so desperately to prevent. These interactions, though brief, would be intense. The thirst for new voices, new perspectives, new stories would be immense. You'd find yourself hanging on every word, trying to absorb months of life into a few short hours of conversation. It's like your only social interaction is the occasional delivery driver, and you're desperately trying to engage them in a philosophical debate about the meaning of existence. This communication deprivation had a significant impact on the keepers and their families. Events in the outside world, from family celebrations to national news, unfolded without their knowledge or participation. They were removed, isolated, observers rather than participants in the grand human drama. This mental disconnect could exacerbate feelings of loneliness, foster a sense of being forgotten, and make the adjustment back to normal society during leave periods incredibly jarring. Historians still debate the psychological toll of such profound communication deprivation on the mental well-being of keepers and their families. Did it breed a hardened, self-reliant stoicism, or did it contribute to higher rates of mental distress and eccentric behavior? It's a complex question, with evidence pointing to both remarkable resilience and tragic cases of isolation-induced hardship. The human need for connection is powerful, and to have it throttled to such a degree tested the very limits of endurance. So, as you pick up your phone and effortlessly connect with friends and family across vast distances, remember the keeper on his remote Australian rock. His social network was a handful of worn letters, a limited set of signal flags, and the fading image of a ship sailing away. His life was a testament to patience, self-reliance, and a quiet acceptance of the world's distant whispers. Knowing that sometimes silence was the loudest message of all, you've learned about the quiet routines, the challenging family life, and the distant whispers of the outside world that define a lighthouse keeper's existence. But the life of a sentinel against the sea is not always one of serene solitude. There are times when the vast, indifferent ocean bares its teeth, when the gentle murmur of waves becomes a deafening roar, and the very air crackles with untamed fury. These are the terrifying moments of storm's relentless fury, when your quiet life is thrust into a desperate battle for survival, both for yourself and for the ships depending on your light. Imagine the atmosphere shifting. The air grows heavy, oppressive. The wind, which usually whispers, begins to howl, gaining an almost sentient malice. The sky darkens with alarming speed, not just with twilight, but with an ominous bruised purple. The ocean, usually a vast blue canvas, begins to churn and foam, its waves rising like angry mountains, crashing against the base of your lighthouse with thunderous impacts that shudder through the very stone of the tower. This isn't just bad weather, this is a storm. Mainstream historical fact. Lighthouse keepers routinely faced extreme weather conditions, from powerful gales and torrential rain to violent cyclones. Their unwavering vigilance and tireless efforts during these storms were absolutely paramount in preventing shipwrecks, often at immense personal risk. It's like having a job where your daily commute involves battling a hurricane, and your office is the very target of its wrath. You are immediately on high alert. You climb to the lantern room, feeling the tower sway and groan like a living thing. The glass panes of the lantern house, so clear and pristine this morning, are now hammered by sheets of rain and flung spray, obscuring your view. The wind screams around the lantern, a terrifying, banshee wail that drowns out all other sounds. You can taste the salt in the air, feel the cold dampness seeping into your clothes, and your ears are deafened by the relentless, all-encompassing roar. Your primary duty is absolute. The light must stay lit. You meticulously check the lamp, ensuring the wicks are trimmed and drawing oil consistently. You wind the clockwork mechanism with renewed vigor, knowing that a single lapse could send a ship careening onto the rocks. You might even find yourself wiping down the inner lens panels between rotations, desperately trying to keep them clear despite the incredible force of the wind and spray. The quirky tidbit here is the physical impact on the lighthouse structure itself. During exceptionally violent storms, waves could break hundreds of feet high, smashing against the lantern room, sometimes even cracking or dislodging glass panes, allowing torrents of salt water to pour into the delicate machinery. Imagine trying to keep a light burning when your window just exploded inwards, and you're now essentially in a very tall, very exposed swimming pool. Through the chaos, your eyes are constantly scanning the storm-lashed ocean. You dread the sight of a ship in distress, but you know it's inevitable. Then, through a momentary break in the driving rain, a horrifying sight, a dark silhouette, tossed like a toy, listing badly, its sails shredded, perilously close to the jagged reef you guard. Your heart leaps into your throat. A shipwreck. In such moments, you are a beacon of hope, but also a witness to tragedy. You might frantically hoist signal flags of distress, or, if you have a cannon, fire a warning shot, hoping against hope to alert any nearby port or rescue vessel. But often, isolated as you are, there is little you can do beyond watching. A profound sense of helplessness washing over you as you witness human lives swallowed by the sea. The image of a vessel breaking apart on the rocks, the distant cries carried by the wind, would haunt your nights for years. It's like having a job as a lifeguard, but the pool is the entire ocean, and you only have one very big floaty. After the storm finally passes, leaving behind a bruised sky and a still churning sea, the grim aftermath begins. You patrol the shore, eyes scanning for debris, for survivors, for bodies. The silence after the storm can feel even more profound, heavy with the weight of recent events. The exhaustion is bone deep, a physical and emotional fatigue that lingers long after the winds have died down. Historians still debate the true number of lives saved solely due to a lighthouse keeper's direct heroic intervention during a storm. While their primary role was preventative, the sheer bravery of many keepers in venturing out in atrocious conditions to rescue survivors or to guide lost vessels with improvised signals is well documented. These moments of intense drama, juxtaposed with the long periods of quiet routine, forged a unique kind of resilience in the keepers. So, as you hear the wind outside your own cozy home, imagine the keeper standing firm in his swaying tower, battling the relentless fury of a raging storm. He is a solitary figure bound to his vital task, a fragile point of light against the vast, terrifying power of the ocean. His silent vigil a constant promise of hope for those battling the darkness. And for him, every storm is a reminder of why his lonely light must never, ever fail. You've survived the storm, witnessed its terrifying fury, and now, as the bruised sky yields to the gentle light of morning, a different aspect of your isolated life comes into focus. Beyond the constant vigil of the light and the profound quiet of your station, there is a vibrant, living world all around you. In the vast stretches of the 19th century Australian coast, the lighthouse keeper's most constant companions were not other humans, but the incredible creatures of nature's wild companionship. Imagine stepping out of the lighthouse, the salty wind whipping your hair, and finding yourself in a landscape unlike any other. Mainstream historical fact, Australia's unique and diverse ecosystem, particularly its resilient coastal flora and distinctive fauna, became an integral and often fascinating part of the isolated lighthouse keeper's daily existence. This wasn't just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing community that shared your remote outpost, providing a constant source of observation, occasional amusement, and sometimes a little bit of trouble. It's like living in a perpetual nature documentary, except you're also responsible for keeping a giant lamp lit, and the animals are definitely judging your life choices. You become intimately familiar with the local bird life, the raucous squawk of galas or cockatoos breaking the morning silence, the majestic, silent glide of an albatross circling overhead, or the busy scamper of small seabirds nesting in the cliffs below. In some southern locations, you might even encounter colonies of little penguins, waddling ashore at dusk. Their routines become your own, a predictable rhythm of flight, feeding, and nesting that offers a sense of order in the human absence. On land, the Australian bush, even in its coastal form, offers a surprising array of residents. The rustle in the saltbush might be a wallaby grazing, or a sleepy possum peering from a hollow log. Perhaps a lumbering echidna trundles across your path, its spines bristling. The keeper's cottage gardens, often a desperate attempt to cultivate fresh vegetables, might wage a constant war against hungry marsupials or persistent insects. You quickly learn to distinguish the call of a kookaburra from a distant crow, or the slither of a snake from the scurry of a lizard, becoming a keen observer of the natural world in a way most city dwellers could never comprehend. The quirky tidbit here is the anecdotal evidence of keepers and their families taking on some truly unusual pets, isolated as they were, desperate for companionship. Tales exist of lighthouse families befriending local wildlife, a tamed kangaroo that would accept scraps from the kitchen, a cheeky possum that would regularly visit the porch, or even a rescued seabird that became a temporary feathered companion. Imagine trying to explain to a visiting dignitary why you have a wallaby sharing your tea, or why your pet penguin keeps trying to polish the brass fittings. It highlights a unique, almost symbiotic relationship that could form when human and wild worlds overlapped in such profound isolation. Of course, not all nature's companionship was charming. You'd likely face the constant battle against pests, mice and rats attempting to infiltrate the stores, or particularly persistent insects drawn to the light. And being in Australia, the ever-present threat of venomous snakes or spiders added a layer of natural danger to even the most mundane chores. A quick trip to the outhouse might involve a quick glance to make sure you weren't sharing it with a brown snake. It's like living in a very beautiful, very dangerous zoo, and you're the only zookeeper. Historians still debate the extent to which these close interactions with nature mitigated the psychological effects of extreme isolation. Did the constant presence of wildlife, the endless drama of the natural world, fill the void left by human absence? Or did it merely provide a distraction from an otherwise overwhelming solitude? It's likely that for many, these connections to the wild were a profound source of comfort, a reminder of the vibrant life continuing around them. Even if it couldn't fully replace human conversation, you stand on the cliff top, feeling the sun on your face, listening to the symphony of the waves and the birds. A curious wallaby watches you from the edge of the bush. Your world is small, but it is intensely alive. This wild companionship is a silent, constant presence, shaping your days and nights, a reminder that even in the most remote corners of the earth, life finds a way to thrive, and connections, however unconventional, continue to form. And for a lighthouse keeper, that wild, untamed company was often the only company he knew. You've witnessed the raw power of Australian storms and found companionship in its wild, untamed nature. Yet, even with the squawking of galas and the distant thump of a wallaby, there remains a pervasive, insidious force that can be more formidable than any gale the loneliness's silent echo. For a 19th century lighthouse keeper, the physical isolation often translated into a profound psychological challenge, a battle fought not against the elements, but within the confines of one's own mind. Imagine the crushing silence after a supply ship has departed, or after your children, now grown, have finally left the station for the outside world. Mainstream historical fact: prolonged isolation, such as that experienced by lighthouse keepers, is widely known to have significant psychological effects, including intense loneliness, profound boredom, heightened anxiety, and an increased risk of mental distress, often colloquially termed cabin fever. It's like living in a very large, very well-appointed prison, where you're both the inmate and the warden, and the only parole officer is a passing albatross. The monotony of the routine, however vital, could be soul-crushing. Day after day, week after week, month after month. The same tasks, the same endless horizon, the same few faces if you had family, the lack of new stimuli, new conversations, new perspectives, could make the mind feel like it was running in circles, endlessly chewing on the same thoughts. You might find yourself staring out at the ocean for hours, lost in thought, or perhaps even in a waking dream, the line between reality and imagination beginning to blur. It's like being stuck in a very long meeting where you're the only one talking, and your audience is just a series of very quiet waves. The battle against boredom was constant. You'd read every book brought by the supply ship, often rereading them until their pages were worn and familiar. You might take up meticulous hobbies carving intricate models of ships from driftwood, knitting endless socks, or tending a small, defiant garden in the salty soil. Every mundane task became an opportunity for intense focus, a way to occupy a mind that craved engagement. Some keepers became obsessive, polishing brass until it vanished, or counting the waves hitting the shore every hour. The quirky tidbit here is the often shared, slightly unsettling anecdotes of keepers developing eccentric habits or, in more tragic cases, succumbing to outright lighthouse madness. There are historical accounts, sometimes embellished, of keepers having imaginary conversations, developing strange rituals, or even engaging in feuds with their only companion, the assistant keeper, over trivial matters. One infamous tale involves two keepers feuding so intensely they built a wall down the middle of the mess hall. Imagine living with someone you actively despise, but can never escape. Suddenly, when the silence doesn't seem so bad, does it? Coping mechanisms were crucial for survival. A strict routine was paramount. The very demands of the light, the necessity of its daily maintenance, provided a vital framework for the day, preventing it from dissolving into an aimless blur. These rituals of cleaning, winding, and observing became anchors, grounding the mind in tangible, purposeful activity. You relied on them not just for the light's operation, but for your own sanity. Writing, too, offered a release. Keepers would diligently record their observations in logbooks, not just weather and ships, but sometimes personal thoughts, a kind of silent dialogue with themselves. Letters, though infrequent, were pored over and responded to with immense care, providing a vital, delayed connection. Pets, whether a stray dog or a befriended seabird, offered a form of uncritical companionship, a living presence to break the endless quiet. Historians still debate the specific long-term mental health outcomes for keepers who spent decades in such profound isolation, given the limited medical records and the social stigma of mental illness at the time. While many found resilience and even contentment in the solitary life, others undoubtedly struggled profoundly, their quiet service exacting a hidden toll on their minds and spirits. The lighthouse, while a beacon of hope for ships, could sometimes become a prison for the keeper. So as you rest in your own comforting space, surrounded by the quiet hum of modern life and the easy access to human connection, spare a thought for the solitary keeper. Hear the distant echo of his loneliness, the quiet struggle against boredom, and the immense mental fortitude required to keep a light burning, not just for ships, but for his own sanity. His silent vigil was a testament to human resilience, a quiet battle fought in the most remote corners of the world, against the most insidious of foes, the profound, echoing silence of the vast, indifferent ocean. You've navigated the quiet despair of loneliness, that subtle, insidious enemy of the mind. But there's another, far more visceral threat lurking in the profound isolation of a 19th century Australian lighthouse station, the terrifying specter of illness's remote threat. In a world where your nearest neighbor might be days away, and your only contact is a supply ship that calls every few months, a simple cough can become pneumonia, a scraped knee can turn into a deadly infection, and a sudden, sharp pain can signal an emergency with no hope of immediate aid. Imagine the sudden onset of a splitting headache, a fever that racks your body with chills and sweat, or the searing pain of a deep cut from a loose piece of machinery. Mainstream historical fact. In 19th century remote locations like lighthouse stations, access to basic medical care was virtually non-existent. A doctor might be days or even weeks away by the fastest available transport, making any illness or injury a potentially life-threatening emergency. There was no calling 000 Australia's emergency number, no rushing to an urgent care clinic, no ambulance wailing its approach. Your only options were what you had on hand, and your own grim determination. A well-stocked lighthouse might have a basic medical kit, a small wooden box containing a few bandages, some antiseptic, perhaps a bottle of laudanum for pain, and a very limited supply of other remedies. But there was no trained medical professional. You, the keeper, or your wife became the doctor, the nurse, and the pharmacist, relying on basic knowledge, common sense, and sheer willpower. A fractured bone, a ruptured appendix, or a severe burn. These were not just painful, they were often death sentences. The fear was amplified if it was a child who fell ill. Imagine the terror of a child burning with fever, struggling for breath, miles from any help. Childhood illnesses that are easily treated today, like measles or scarlet fever, could sweep through a confined lighthouse family with devastating consequences. And for the keeper's wife, the prospect of childbirth in such isolation was a terrifying ordeal, often with only the keeper himself, or a very basic instruction manual as her sole attendant. It's like having a baby delivered by a really enthusiastic amateur plumber, who also happens to be your husband. The quirky tidbit here focuses on the harrowing journeys sometimes undertaken in desperate attempts to get medical help. Stories abound of keepers or their assistants enduring agonizing voyages by rowboat or small vessel, battling rough seas to reach the nearest settlement or hospital. Imagine a keeper with a severely infected limb, or a child barely breathing, being rowed for days across treacherous waters, their survival hanging precariously on the strength of a few desperate strokes. These were not emergency services. These were acts of sheer, desperate courage against overwhelming odds, and they often ended in tragedy. In such circumstances, stoicism became a way of life. You learned to ignore pain, to push through discomfort, to dismiss what might otherwise be a serious symptom, simply because there was no alternative. You relied on simple traditional remedies, poultices of local herbs, infusions of tea, or perhaps a generous dose of brandy to numb the pain. And you prayed. You prayed for the fever to break, for the pain to subside, for the supply ship to arrive ahead of schedule. Historians still debate the true mortality rates attributed to the lack of immediate medical care in these remote lighthouse communities. While many keepers and their families lived long, healthy lives, the shadow of untreated illness and accidental injury loomed large, a constant, unspoken threat that underscored their vulnerability. Every headache, every ache, every cut carried a weight of potential dread that most modern individuals can scarcely imagine. The burden of care also fell heavily on the family members. A healthy spouse or child would become the sole caregiver, facing not only the physical demands of nursing, but also the immense emotional toll of helplessness. They would watch and wait and hope, often alone with their sick or injured loved one, knowing that every passing hour lessened the chance of recovery. So, as you hear the gentle hum of your own home, and know that medical help is just a phone call away, spare a thought for the 19th century lighthouse keeper. His quiet vigil was not only against the storms of the sea, but also against the terrifying silence of an illness that struck without warning, in a place where modern medicine was but a distant, impossible dream. His resilience wasn't just in keeping the light, but in surviving the raw, unfiltered reality of life and death, miles from any comfort or aid, utterly dependent on his own strength and the fickle hand of fate. You've battled sickness in solitude and stared down the silent echo of loneliness. Your life as a lighthouse keeper is defined by raw elements and enduring human spirit. But even in your remote outpost on the Australian coast, the relentless march of human ingenuity doesn't stop. As the 19th century progressed, the very heart of your lighthouse, the light itself, underwent a series of remarkable transformations, bringing forth light's evolving brilliance and slowly, subtly, changing the very nature of your daily vigil. Imagine your powerful lamp, perhaps still burning with whale oil or the slightly cleaner colza oil, a precious commodity brought by the infrequent supply ship. You meticulously trim its multiple wicks, ensuring a steady, bright flame. This was the pinnacle of early 19th century illumination. But scientists and engineers were always tinkering, always searching for a brighter, more efficient, and more reliable source of light. Mainstream historical fact: lighthouse illumination evolved significantly throughout the 19th century, transitioning from traditional whale and colza oils to vastly brighter and more efficient fuels like kerosene. This marked a monumental leap in the power and range of lighthouses worldwide. It was like upgrading from a candle to a modern stadium floodlight, all in the space of a few decades. For ships at sea, this meant the light could be seen from much further away, providing earlier warning and greater safety. For the keeper, it meant a cleaner, more intense light to manage. The shift to kerosene, which began gaining prominence around the mid-19th century, was a true game changer. Kerosene burned hotter, brighter, and, crucially, much cleaner than animal or vegetable oils. This meant less soot buildup on your perfectly polished Fresnel lens, reducing the sheer amount of daily cleaning required. But it also meant handling a new, more volatile fuel. The quirky tidbit here is the logistical challenge of transporting vast quantities of this relatively new, sometimes unstable, fuel to incredibly remote lighthouse stations across vast oceans. Imagine barrels of highly flammable liquid being hauled across treacherous rocks and up-winding staircases, a constant low-level anxiety for the keepers and supply crews. It was like getting a delivery of rocket fuel for your very important but very remote backyard barbecue. Beyond fuels, the very design of the burners evolved. Early lamps had multiple wicks. Later innovations included vaporized kerosene burners, where the fuel was turned into a gas before burning, creating an intensely bright, stable flame with remarkable efficiency. This meant less fuel consumed for more light, a win-win for the cost-conscious authorities and the diligent keepers. Then came the really exciting, though still very rare, technological marvels, the very beginnings of electric light. Towards the very end of the 19th century, a few pioneering lighthouses began experimenting with electric arc lamps. These were incredibly bright, but also extremely complex, requiring their own generators and highly specialized knowledge to operate. While electricity wouldn't become common in lighthouses until much later, its early introduction marked a new frontier in illumination, hinting at a future far beyond oil and wicks. For you, the keeper, it might be a distant whisper of future change, or perhaps a rumor from the supply ship about some fancy new light in a far-off port. These advancements had a profound impact on your daily life. While the core duties of watchkeeping and cleaning remained, the nature of the work subtly shifted. A brighter, cleaner-burning lamp meant less constant fiddling with wicks and a reduced fear of soot obscuring the beam. The improved mechanisms for rotating the lens were more reliable, requiring less intervention throughout the night, though still needing their daily winding and inspection. Your role gradually transitioned from constant, manual intervention to more vigilant monitoring of increasingly complex and powerful machinery. Historians still debate the extent to which these technological advancements truly ease the keeper's daily burden versus simply increasing their responsibility for more complex machinery and the ever-present anxiety of a system failure. Did a brighter light mean less stress? Or did it just mean a bigger, more expensive light to keep running perfectly? It's a fascinating question, as the relentless drive for efficiency often came with new demands. You stand in the lantern room, the new burner, if you're lucky enough to have one, casting a blindingly bright beam that slices through the Australian night with unprecedented power. The air is cleaner, the light stronger, and the mechanical hum perhaps a little smoother. You are still the solitary guardian, but the tools of your trade are evolving, becoming more powerful, more efficient, and perhaps hinting at a future where the light's brilliance no longer demands quite so much human toil. It's a quiet revolution, ticking away in the heart of your lonely tower, making the vast dark ocean just a little bit safer, one brighter flash at a time. You've adapted to light's evolving brilliance, marveling at the brighter, cleaner beams that pierce the darkness with newfound power. The constant vigilance remains, but the mechanical heart of your lighthouse is becoming more sophisticated, demanding less hands-on intervention. Yet, ironically, these very advancements, these triumphs of human ingenuity, carried within them the seeds of change that would eventually lead to the fading away of your very role. This is the story of automation's gentle ousting, a quiet revolution that gradually transformed lighthouses from bustling homes to silent, Self-sufficient sentinels. Imagine a new kind of light, not burning oil, but gas. Mainstream historical fact. The invention of reliable gas-powered lights, particularly acetylene-Dalman light and later electric and solar-powered systems in the late 19th and 20th centuries, gradually led to the automation and unmanning of lighthouses worldwide. Acetylene lights, in particular, could burn unattended for months on end, requiring only infrequent visits for maintenance. This was a monumental leap, making constant human presence in the lantern room the very core of your existence, increasingly redundant. It was like your personal assistant, who was so good at their job, eventually just became a very efficient robot that needed no breaks or conversation. For a lighthouse keeper, the introduction of these automated systems meant less constant attention to wicks, less tedious polishing of brass, and eventually no more long, solitary night watches. The clockwork mechanism might still be there, but now it's often supplemented, or entirely replaced, by a gas-powered mechanism that simply requires a periodic check, not constant winding. The light, once a fiery beast requiring human taming, became a docile, self-sufficient servant. This transition wasn't sudden. It was a slow, deliberate process, often spanning decades for each lighthouse. Early automated systems still had their quirks and occasional failures, sometimes necessitating a keeper's intervention. But the direction was clear. These new lights were vastly more cost-effective. Maintaining a remote lighthouse, supplying food, fuel, and providing relief for keepers was incredibly expensive. Automation offered a way to save vast sums of money. Redirecting those resources elsewhere, it was a practical decision, made for fiscal responsibility and perhaps also for safety, as it removed humans from inherently hazardous and isolated locations. The quirky tidbit here is that despite the efficiency, these early automated lights sometimes bred new anxieties. Keepers, in their rare visits, might find themselves worried about the lamp's reliability, or experience a strange unease that the light was operating without human oversight. There are even whispers of ghost stories associated with automated lighthouses, where the silence after the keepers left felt heavier, imbued with the absence of human life. It's like when your smart home system starts turning on lights by itself, and you're not sure if it's convenient or slightly sinister. Did the light just flash twice, or is it trying to tell me something? The process of unmanning a lighthouse was often an emotional one. For generations, these stations had been homes, workplaces, and symbols of human resilience. For the keepers and their families, it was the end of a way of life, a displacement from a profession that had defined their identities. You might be reassigned to a busier port or offered an early retirement, but the unique rhythm of your existence, the profound connection to the light and the sea, would be gone. Historians still debate the extent to which automation truly improved overall maritime safety versus removing the invaluable human element of direct observation and local knowledge. While a machine won't get drowsy or fall ill, it also won't spot a distressed vessel outside its program parameters, or launch a heroic rescue in a storm. The loss of the human eye, the human brain, and the human heart from these vital outposts was a complex trade-off, balancing efficiency against irreplaceable intuition. You stand in your lantern room, looking out at the relentless Australian sea. Perhaps a new, automated burner sits within the lens, humming with an unfamiliar, efficient sound. Your daily duties are fewer, the light brighter, the loneliness perhaps even deeper now, knowing that your constant presence is no longer strictly necessary. The flash of the light is still a beacon of hope, but it's no longer your personal, unwavering vigil. The era of the solitary keeper is slowly, inexorably, coming to its close, replaced by the quiet, tireless work of machines, a testament to progress, but also a poignant farewell to a unique chapter in maritime history. You've seen the relentless march of progress, the quiet hum of automated machinery slowly replacing the rhythmic footsteps of the keeper. The light, once nurtured by human hands, now burns with cold, efficient brilliance, a self-sufficient sentinel in the vast darkness. This marks the end of an era, a profound shift in maritime history. But even as the last keepers leave their remote stations, the keeper's enduring legacy continues to shine, a powerful and vital image that transcends the technological advancements. Imagine a modern lighthouse. Its powerful beam sweeps across the ocean, powered by solar panels or a quiet generator, its systems monitored remotely from a distant office. No human hand trims its wicks, no footsteps echo on its winding stairs at night. Mainstream historical fact. While the vast majority of lighthouses worldwide are now fully automated, the human lighthouse keeper remains a powerful symbol of dedication, solitude, and unwavering service to maritime safety. The structures themselves stand as monuments, but the living, breathing presence that once sustained them is gone. It's like your favorite old bookstore, now run entirely by robots. Efficient, yes, but where's the soul? Yet, the image of the lighthouse keeper persists, holding a unique and enduring place in our collective imagination. Why? Because it speaks to something fundamentally human, the quiet heroism of enduring solitude, the immense responsibility of guarding lives, and the unwavering dedication to a singular, vital purpose. The lighthouse keeper is a symbol of resilience, of steadfastness against the raging elements, a beacon of hope in the literal and figurative darkness. He represents a simpler yet infinitely harder way of life, where man and nature were in a constant, visceral dialogue. The quirky tidbit here is the continued, almost obsessive fascination with historical lighthouses and the stories of their keepers. People flock to visit these automated towers, climb their winding stairs, and explore the now empty keepers' cottages. There are museums, books, documentaries, and endless romantic tales devoted to these solitary figures. This enduring interest suggests that, while automation might be more efficient, it can never quite replace the allure of the human touch, the human sacrifice, and the human story behind every flash of light. It's almost as if we miss the idea of someone being genuinely lonely just so our ships don't hit rocks. For centuries, these keepers were the ultimate unsung heroes. They didn't win battles or discover continents, though they often saved the ships that did. Their glory was in the absence of disaster, in the ships that passed safely by, unseen and unthanked. Their lives were a testament to patience, meticulousness, and an almost spiritual connection to the vital light they tended. They embodied qualities that, in our fast-paced, interconnected world, we sometimes feel are slipping away. Historians still debate whether the romanticized image of the lighthouse keeper truly reflects the often harsh, monotonous, and mentally taxing realities of their daily lives, or whether it merely serves a nostalgic purpose, an idealized vision of stoic simplicity. It's likely a complex interplay. The reality was undoubtedly brutal, but the inherent purpose of the job, its vital necessity, imbued it with an undeniable nobility. The keepers weren't just keeping a light, they were keeping a promise, a constant vigil against the chaos of the sea. They truly were the original 24/7 essential workers, without the convenience of a coffee shop drive-thru. So, as the silent automated beam sweeps across the vast ocean, and the modern world hums with data and instant communication, take a moment to reflect on the quiet legacy of the lighthouse keeper. His is a story of profound isolation, unwavering duty, and a deep, often unspoken bond with the untamed beauty and terrifying power of the Australian coast. The light now shines on its own, but its brilliance, its unwavering promise of safety, forever carries the echo of the human heart that once kept it burning. The light of our story now softly fades, just as the sun sets over the distant Australian coast. You've journeyed through the wild waves, felt the solitude of the lighthouse, and heard the gentle hum of its turning light. The quiet dedication of the keeper, his steadfast watch, and his profound connection to the lonely beacon have filled your mind, easing you deeper into calm. Let the sounds of the ocean, the cries of the gulls, and the steady whir of the lighthouse's mechanisms become a gentle, distant lullaby. The need for vigilance, the endless tasks, the profound isolation all are now part of a fading memory, a quiet whisper carried on the night air. There's no longer a watch to keep, no storm to weather, no loneliness to conquer. You are safe, you are warm, and the vast, peaceful ocean of sleep stretches out before you, tranquil and inviting. Close your eyes. Let go of any lingering thoughts and surrender to the quiet, comforting darkness. Your journey is complete. Rest deeply. Sweet dreams.